All right, welcome everybody. I have a special guest here today, Brianna. Brianna has joined us to share her story, where she started, where she's been, and where she is now. Now, we're speaking 7 days, just a little bit over 7 days after we finished our 12-week coaching experience. But I'm going to let Brianna lead you guys through her journey and through her experience. So, Brianna, welcome. Why don't you tell the group a little bit about yourself?
I have two young kids, 2 and 4. Um, I am off in the summers. I'm with my boys. Um, and we're busy. We started extracurriculars and it's not slowing down. We're just getting started. So life is getting chaotic. And yeah.
Yeah, that's you in a nutshell. So let's retrace because you and I first had connected maybe like over a year ago, and then you and I had a call, and you had just had baby number two, and then
Yep.
you said, "No, I kind of want to wait things out. I'm not ready. I'm gonna do things on my own. I think I got this." And then a year later, where were you at? Just before we joined to coaching, can you kind of paint like what were you trying? Where were you at? What made you want to jump onto coaching?
I think nothing had changed since I reached out to you. I was still at the same weight. I was still stuck in the way I was eating, the exercise. My lifestyle hadn't changed. I was in a rut and I was feeling like I wasn't being the best parent I could. Um, so it was, I had reached out. My husband and I were just chatting. I had reached out. I kind of said, like, this is it. I've had enough. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
So I reached out to you, not committing to anything. And then we chatted and it spiraled. And yeah, I was like, okay, after talking to you, I was like, now's the time. You're like, why not?
Yeah. And initially you had a little bit of hesitation because you were off in the summer. Your boys were off and you were like, it's kind of out of routine. Things are really busy right now. So I'll wait until the fall when I get back into routine. And then you were like, wait a minute. I've talked about it with my husband and it doesn't make sense to wait. And I think that that's important to point out because a lot of women wait until like, hey, I'll just wait until the magical season of fall or the new year or when summer is over or what have you that looks like. I'll just wait until things kind of calm down or settle down or I'm back into routine, but you jumped on it before routine started happening. So can you talk a little bit about that, like the decision to jump on it before, like not waiting and
Yeah. Yeah. So initially I was hesitant because I wanted to just make sure we were good. My wage was less, and that made me nervous. Um, and the summer was busy with two young kids. I thought this isn't a good time, right? It's not a good picture of what my day to day is. So I didn't feel like it was a great time. Um, Now looking back, I feel like it was the best time possible because that time being off allowed me to really wrap my head around things, have time to meet and to chat and to really plan to set me up for success when I went back to work.
yeah, and the other thing too is that you, despite not being able to lose weight, you kind of always said like I have a really good like I have a good eating routine when I'm working,
When
right?
I'm at work,
I
yeah.
know where my breaks are. I pack my food, I eat my food, I'm good. But it was always like the summer and stuff that would also throw you off too, and making you feel like you had to like start over too.
Yeah,
The advantage of like you starting is one, yeah, you had a little bit more flexibility and time in terms of trying to learn and get set up. But the other thing is now it gives you a strategy for when you're off next summer and then a
hmm,
strategy for when you're back in routine. So it's kind of like two game plans in one.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just again like to reiterate that for women that are here because there's this idea that we have to wait for the perfect time and you almost fell into that trap as well. And we had talked a year and then it waited a year and then you were going to wait until September rolled around. And so, but the advantage to that is like there were a lot more pros to doing it that way than cons.
There definitely was.
Yeah.
Yes. And I thought it would be more challenging when I was off, but it actually just became natural,
Yeah.
right? And then it just going back to work, I thought would have been tricky, but I've seemed to figure it out. You figure it out.
Yeah. So let's talk about it because you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and you have a husband that doesn't like he sometimes works away as well. So you're a solo parent. Like during our coaching one, you had a hospital stay with your son. You had
Mhm.
a husband that worked away. He worked away for about a week out of our coaching program. And then you had your dad that unexpectedly kind of stayed with you for a bit as well. So it was like it wasn't a smooth sailing ride. But like
No,
there's a lot of women who will say like it's just about my kids, it's about my kids, and and yours is about your kids as well. But it, finding it like with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old hard to manage it. Like how do you do it, right? It's like I'll just wait until they're older, but here you are doing it with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So speak to the moms that might be listening this to be like, hey, I'm in the survival phase of a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old too. How do you do it?
stop. I think, you know, my little one wasn't sleeping through the night. He still isn't sleeping through the night. I think we were busy and I just wasn't feeling I was lack of energy, right? I feel like I wasn't being as patient as maybe I could be, right? Um, I feel like I went into this for them, um, and I came out having a little bit of a different perspective, right? That it's not for them, it's for me, and it is for them, right? But you had said something to me once in one of our trainings, and you said, oh, what did you say? Me too, right? And when I started this, it was more for them to have the energy, to have the patience, to feel better um, for them. But you made me realize me too. And that stuck with me, right? Um, so at the beginning, it was tricky, right? But once you find your groove and you learn how to plan and you find those foods that your kids can eat and they love to eat and that work for you, I feel like our home has balanced, right? And we found our groove in what is a safe meal choice, right? So
Because you're
I
not
think
creating like separate meals now. Like you maybe some
no,
components of it are, but like you're not really cooking separate meals and you're eating together as a family and you're not fighting with picky kids or anything. And
no. I think we all eat the same meal, so we'll all have burgers. They might have fries and all have steamed broccoli. They also want steamed broccoli, right? So it's just being more mindful of those things. Um, I think I've always planned meals for my children. So for me, it was just what I had done, right? So I just started planning for me too, right? Um, but the idea seems overwhelming, but it's really not. And I found my go-to meals, right? So if the kids want, say, macaroni and cheese, I have a go-to meal that I feel comfortable with. That's a higher protein that I just will go to, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the kids are fine. Like it's just natural for us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So like, okay, so talk about because you had tried to do this on your own, tried to lose weight. Let's look at from the nutrition lens. What did you learn about nutrition? Like what was like, oh my God, if I had learned that years ago, then I would have saved all of that time and all of those headaches trying to do it this way.
I think what I was missing was the protein. I think I had misconceptions of what protein was for me. I think, I was counting my peanut butter and my hummuses, and I was hesitant with the protein shakes, right? Just because I didn't have the knowledge.
Mhm.
And now I'm more conscious of my protein. Um, and that's been a big one for me. my fats, my carbs, I'm very aware of, but it was the protein that was like an aha moment. And every day I have my protein, whether it's like a protein drink, a protein shake, veggie protein, like in some way, I have found what works for me, and always having that um, has helped me.
Yeah. And
Made me feel fuller, right? And I've been missing that. I've always gone to the carbs, right? And now bumping up my protein, I'm feeling fuller.
and we talked because we've talked about cravings too, right? It was like one of the
Hmm.
things that we talked about at coaching is like, don't you ever have a craving for anything? Let's work through some craving stuff. And you're just like, I feel really satisfied with everything that I'm eating.
Yeah,
Yeah. And just for the woman that's listening to this too, like this isn't a protein shake based meal plan. It was
I know.
if you
This is
like protein shakes and you have the option of adding one in, but you certainly don't have to.
this is just what worked for me to get my protein in because I struggled with my protein.
You did.
I'm not a big meat eater. And I have lactose, so I have to be more mindful of the lactose piece of it. And the protein is just the protein shake and the protein drink is just what worked for me. And I feel comfortable and I feel good about it. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. And the other thing that you remarked was like, I'm eating a lot more food. I think because you'd always tried to lose weight eating less.
eating less carbs. Yeah, eating, yes.
Yeah. And so now here you were eating a variety, and then you found a way to make it work with your kids as well, right? So you weren't cooking separate meals. You found a way to do that. You spent a week in the hospital too, and you found a way to make it work for you and meet your protein needs. You don't really get a lot of scheduled breaks, like they're short, they're quick. So you found
Mhm.
a way to have quick grab and go options for you to do it. You found a way
Yeah.
to do it when your husband wasn't around for nighttime routines or helping with dinner. You did a meal prep before he left to kind of help you with all that.
Mhm.
And you did it using all real food and things that you enjoy. And I think that that's like an
Yeah.
important recap for women because they're so used to like, kind of white knuckling it their way through. And I'm sure you were too, right? And then missing out on things and then feeling like, oh, the diet's over and then going to those things afterwards.
Yeah, and we had had those talks where I had tried things to up my protein, like the dips and whatnot, and I didn't like it. And you had told me, okay, don't have it. We'll find something else. And I did. I
Mhm.
found something that works for me. But it was through trial and error, right? That we had tried different things in order for me to get a little bit more protein. And it was okay to say that I didn't like something because we will find something else.
Yeah, yeah. And
One being the shake.
you did have a birthday in there.
Yeah.
Right? And you were eating cake. So
Hmm.
talk to you because
Hmm.
that was new for you, trying to lose weight and having some of those foods that was new for you. So talk
Yeah.
about maybe some of the mindset or like how does that work? How does someone lose weight and have that and not have food guilt or snowball into eating more?
Yeah. I think, I'm still learning. Um, but trying to look at my foods and trying to look at my foods and sorry, there's a little one. Um, and planning. So going into the birthday party, we had chatted a lot because the cake did make me nervous. The pizza made me nervous. Um, because I guess I had this perspective of you can't eat that. And you had said to me, just being more mindful, right? Like you're allowed the cake. But I would just plan my breakfast and my lunch based on what my dinner was. So I went into it fully knowing I was going to eat a piece of pizza.
Mhm.
Um, but I had maybe been more aware of what my breakfast and lunch was going to be based on that. Um, I eat everything, right? Just in moderation and planning my other meals around that. Um, and I've struggled. That has been a challenge for me. Um, at the times of surprises
Yeah.
when I can't plan that. Um, but I feel like it's a work in progress, but I feel like I feel more comfortable now eating those things because, again, I have those meals that I have comfort in knowing they're higher protein or they're, higher veggies or whatnot. Um, so I just know the next day, if that happens, the next day I'm just going to go to one of those meals.
Yeah, and you and I kind of talked a lot about too, like this sense of needing control, right? And so when
Mm-hmm.
this happens, it's like, how do regain control, or what do I do with that? So you and I talked in real time a lot about like how to navigate those situations and not kind of, because you were beating yourself up sometimes, and
Yeah.
we kind of had to work through, how do we get out of that kind of frame of mind too, and then see the pizza and the cake as a food versus like a treat food, or needing to earn it or whatever it's
Yes.
like.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was a big one, is that it's not like a reward, right? I've eaten so well and I've stuck to my plan for a week, I get pizza. That was a big mindset change, but that was a huge milestone because that's what kind of helped me almost accept that, this is a change. I'm like a lifestyle change. It's not a 3-month change, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And even just like, hey, we were done coaching, and you just said, hey, I just went through Halloween. And so you navigated Halloween by yourself. So some women could finish the 12 weeks and be like, okay, now I'm going to go back to my old patterns. But for you, just before this call, we kind of checked in, and you said like, no, I had a chocolate and I was good.
Mm-hmm.
I moved
Yeah.
on, right? I wasn't stuck there. Like usually I'd get there and get stuck and then start all over on Monday.
Yeah, I think what's pretty special about the program is that a lot of it is mindset, right? It's really working on your mindset because that controls so much of your eating, right? And so for me, understanding like, okay, listen to your body. When your body is done, like when you feel full, stop, right? Check in with yourself. Make sure you're drinking the water and make sure, you're kind of being mindful of what you're putting in your mouth. Um, but also allowing yourself to eat the things you want to eat.
Yeah, yeah. So you don't feel deprived or feel the push and pull with that, right? And you're doing it with ages 2 and 4, right? Like there's snacks all over
Mhm.
the place there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you lost 18.5 pounds in our coaching program and 23 inches, but you're
Mhm.
continuing to lose. Now,
Mhm.
the reason why I'm pulling that in is because when we tried to do exercise and it didn't work because your little guy was still getting up in the middle of the night,
Mhm.
with the way your schedule is set up, and there wasn't really time in the morning to do an exercise session because he was random when he woke you up. And two, it was just the way your evening was set up. So we tried the exercise thing, and you managed
Yeah.
to lose all of that weight, and it wasn't doing exercise. So we tried it, and it was kind of like, this isn't working. And so
Mhm.
came up with a new plan. So tell kind of everybody like what happened on the exercise movement front for you.
So we upped my walking. We kind of made that our focus. Then we kind of were like, okay, what can we do now? And we went into it. We had this chat. I was nervous about starting it, based on time, and we gave it a try. We both agreed, let's just try it, see how it goes. Um, I gave it a few weeks and it just was too hard to fit it in, with a little one who's not sleeping. Um, so, I think we started at like a 30-minute workout, 20-minute workout, whatnot. Um, but it was just too tricky at the time. So then we regrouped, we met, and we decided this isn't working. Let's stick to the walking and let's look at the walking. Is your pace going to change? Is the time going to change? So that was a way to still make change, still make gains, but something that's manageable in my day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had to take into consideration where you were at in your life. We had to
Yeah.
make sure that it was a perceived block or an actual block. We figured out it's an actual block, and so then we had to modify from there and look at what can we do.
Hmm.
And I love that you pointed that out because that's an advantage of having a coach in real time, right? Versus like you working on your own, you would have been
Yeah.
like, fuck this, like,
Yeah.
kind of
Hmm.
given up, right? And so here you've talked about nutrition, you've talked about mindset. What did you learn in your exercise, but what did you learn about yourself?
Um, I think a lot. I think one, I've accepted and I've looked, my relationship with food has changed. Um, I realize, I think confidence. Um, but I now feel like I guess I've realized how important the food piece is. I always thought the working out piece was so important, but I've realized how important that piece is and how the mind has such a big piece of this, right? Um, and I knew I was busy, but I didn't think this was obtainable. I didn't think almost 20 pounds was obtainable just by changing what I ate. And I did, and I lost the weight, right? And I feel better now that I've changed what, like just being more mindful of what I'm eating. Um, I feel fuller. I don't feel those cravings, right? Um, and I feel like I have the energy to with the kids. And so I feel like I've realized one, how fixated I was on food and how a lot of people I think reward themselves with food. Um, and so I wasn't really setting myself up for success. Um, So I think like you said, like the mindset, it's all changed, right? Doing this program. At the beginning it was hard. I didn't think I would make it to the 3 months, right? Like it was very hard to change your perspective. But when you start adding in, the little workshops to really focus on your perspective of yourself and your relationships and all these things, you're working on you as a whole,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the most important piece of this program is that it's not just about one thing, right? Yes, the working out didn't work for me, but we worked on a lot of other things, right? And working out looks different, right? For many people. And for me, it was just the walking.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's who's to say, like next year he starts sleeping and it's like, okay, now you're equipped. The nutrition thing feels easy to handle. The mindset's in the
Mhm.
right place. Well, it's going to feel way easier to add in the exercise piece versus
Yeah.
you adding in the exercise piece, figuring out the nutrition on your own and not having the mindset to back it up, right? So it's kind of
Yeah.
like layered approach, or like James Clear says, this habit stacking approach.
Mhm.
And then that can be the next layer that you kind of add in. When you think about women and you think about where you were and you were struggling to lose weight, and you think about women around you that are struggling to lose weight, what do they need to know? What do they need to know, or what do they need to focus on? Or sometimes we talk about like what is the biggest needle mover? And even just like you saying like I thought I was eating protein, but I wasn't eating enough protein. So some women don't even believe that that's a needle mover because they're like, well, I'm doing that and it's not working.
Mhm.
So what do you think, like describe what the needle mover is or what you feel like women should know about the needle movers. Do you get what I'm saying? Like what's the
Yeah.
thing they're not focusing on or dismissing?
I think, life is just busy, right? And taking that step and realizing it's manageable. This is all manageable. It's not like I've revamped everything, right? We know that we should be eating veggies. We know we should be eating protein. How do we incorporate that in a way that one, we enjoy it, and two, maybe it's a bit of a healthier or being more mindful of trying to eat more,
Mhm.
right? So I think taking that step, because life is always going to be busy. I know when I started this, I had said, oh, I wanted to wait till I was back to work, whatever. But it's never going to be the perfect time,
Mhm.
right? And I think making that step, you know, yes, my kids noticed, right? But not in a negative way. I still ate what they ate. Um, so I think, you know, you just have to make the step. And I think this whole process is at times hard, but having you to, chat with every day to kind of be like, there are times I was like, hey, what's this? Right? Um, what, is this a carb? Is this a protein? Right? Like sausages. Maybe I would have looked at it more of as a protein,
Mhm.
right? So being a more aware of labels too, which I never would have paid attention to, or, the grams I should be consuming a day. Um,
Or
so
even like when
just,
you're in the hospital, with messages like, where can I go grab something? Like, what can I go grab?
yes,
Right? What
yes,
can bring me? Or it's like, okay, I have this busy day. Or like you guys went somewhere with the kids for was it a park or somewhere?
yes, to the zoo. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
And
was-
so we kind of chatted about that kind of stuff too.
yes. And I think like being open in this process, like this is a very vulnerable process. And I don't think people understand that when you jump into this, that you have to be open and honest. Like, I'm sure you have it with a lot of your clients. You have to be vulnerable because that's the only way our mindset is going to change. And we're going to be able to take this all in and run with it even after the 3 months is over, right?
Yeah.
Um, like at times it's hard. It's hard to hear, you thought you were eating protein with peanut butter and actually no. That's more of a fat, right? Like that was a big one for me. And I think, you know, I would go back and I would say, "Oh, the kids are eating protein." Well, no, not really,
Mhm.
right? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think this whole process, looking back, is pretty amazing and it all makes sense. But at the time, it may feel like a challenge. Um, but my day to day didn't feel hard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Right?
like
It
the
was just the
reflection too.
plan.
Because even like you spending a year trying to figure it out on your own, that is a version of hard. Or even the dialogue that you have
Mhm.
in your head that says like I feel guilty for eating that, or like here I am on a Monday starting over. That is a version of hard that we dismiss. We see this as hard, but not all of that ruminating as hard, right? So
Mhm.
now it was like you were investing the same kind of energy and thinking, but it had an outlet. It had a way to go. It had progression. It wasn't like spinning its wheel there. So I appreciate that you said, hey, parts of it were hard, but it didn't really change your everyday. The everyday didn't feel hard, but
Mhm.
some of those moments where it was challenging the way I believed about myself or believed about what needed to happen or whatever, those parts were challenging. And
Mhm.
even just the physical stuff of like, hey, how do I get more protein in my day when I'm moving around? We had to play around with what would
Yeah.
work for you too, right? And it was being open to like that troubleshooting or that trial and error too. So I appreciate that you said it was like, hey, it wasn't easy peasy. I have two young kids and
Mhm.
but it was like looking back, it was like it wasn't as hard looking back, and in the day
No.
it wasn't like a full sweep change.
No, that's it. And, having you to just like guide me when I felt like I was struggling or I felt like I was making poor decisions, it was nice to have somebody just who understands to talk to and help me like navigate my way through that.
Hmm.
Because at times you kind of feel like, you're like, this is a lot, right? At times you're like, am I doing this right? What, you know what I mean? And you were able to help me navigate through all those challenges of eating cake and pizza and whatnot. So I think that was really helpful. And I don't think I would have ever come out, well, I wouldn't have come out so successful if I didn't have you for those 3 months, right? Like if we weren't together, if it was a month, I probably would have given up,
Hmm.
right? Because you have to see through the whole process because there's so many steps in the 3 months. It's not just about what you're putting in your mouth, right? There's more to it. Um, and so I think that 3 months was so crucial, right? Because then you feel a little bit more confident in what you're doing. You've been doing it for long enough, right? And personally, I found the meals my go-to meals, right? So when I feel like I'm struggling, those I go to my go-to meal.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I feel confident because I know that's a high protein. I know that's a healthier of maybe something I would have gone to. So I think that's also important is having those go-to meals that you feel confident in, right?
Yeah, that's my success story too, is I have those confident, like those go-to meals too, right?
Hmm.
And I have those go-to staples that are always there. Like even today, I didn't have any protein. I ate all my protein, but I had a can of salmon. So I made a really nice bowl with the salmon, the canned salmon. So it's having those go-to meals, but also those go-to options too, which is something that's been important for you.
Yeah, and I think too, like accepting that yours and I, like your idea of a go-to meal and mine are very different.
Yeah.
But that's okay because what we've talked about this whole process is that's what works for me right now. And that might change. But right now, in this moment with two young kids and all the things, that's what works for me.
Yeah.
And that's okay,
Yeah.
right? They don't have to be the same. I don't have to try to do all these beautiful meals that you do. I just have to find what works for me. That's a healthy version and what I feel confident in.
But that's what that's about building a lifestyle, right? It's
Yeah.
when you get a generic meal plan, you're having to force yourself into someone else's plan. But this is like, what do I want my plan to look like? And have
Yes.
someone outline the guidelines and troubleshoot with you. That's it. So just before we go, like what would you say is like the one key piece of advice? The woman's still struggling. She feels like I'm a mom of young kids too. I feel like it's all about the kids. I can't take time for myself, but I really want this. I feel a little bit lost. What piece of advice would you leave for her as she's trying to figure that piece out?
I think taking the step and accepting that, you know, it's okay, right? It's okay to ask people for help. It's okay to, reach out to these communities and get ideas. And, it's okay to make the time for you. Like, I have missed out on a few bedtimes, right? But in the long run, that's for all of us, right? I'm trying to help all of us,
Mhm.
right? Just be a happier place, you know, being more patient and, having more energy. It's for all of us. It's not just for me.
I
It's
love it.
not just for the kids.
It's me too.
It's me too.
I like it. And that's a beautiful place to end there. I want to thank you for taking your time and sharing your story. And I think that like when women can come together and share their stories, it inspires other women as well. And women can see themselves reflected back as well. So it gives them a hopeful message too. So thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you.
All right.